Okay, it is 7:48. We're returning to regular council. Next on the agenda is Resolution 2023-25, collective bargaining agreement between the City of Johnstown and the Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, which is the full-time police officers, serve number 2023-MED-03-0209. Does anyone on council have any questions about this resolution? Do any citizens have any questions on this resolution? Okay, this is the first union agreement ever in the city of Johnstown, history of Johnstown. There'll be two resolutions, one for the patrolmen and one for the sergeants. We spent probably 6 months in negotiations, and we reached an agreement. And tonight is the final process of that for us to vote on it. So I would like to make a motion that we move forward with Resolution 2023-25 as written.
I second.
Did you do public hearing?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Charlie Campbell,
Yes.
Nicole Shook,
Yes.
Bob Orsini,
Yes.
John Merriman,
Yes.
Ed Barnard,
Yes.
Brian Green,
Yes.
Sharon Hendren.
Yes.
Awesome. Next is Resolution 2023-26, collective bargaining agreement between the City of Johnstown and Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, full-time sergeants, serve number 2023-MED-03-028. Again, this is the bargaining agreement between the city and the sergeants. We have two sergeants, so they are included in this. Does anyone on council have any questions? Do we have any comments or questions from the citizens? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with Resolution 2023-26 as written.
I'll second.
Nicole Shook,
Yes.
Bob Orsini,
Yes.
John Merriman,
Yes.
Ed Barnard,
Yes.
Brian Green,
Yes.
Sharon Hendren.
Yes.
Charlie Campbell.
Yes.
Awesome. This was I would like to say, as part of the bargaining union, our bargaining team, it was a great learning process. It was also very nice to deal with both sides. It went very, very well. I think there was a lot of back and forth, but we learned a lot, and I think this sets the standard for where we will move forward. Again, this agreement is for 3 years. That's the max time period in the state of Ohio. So in 3 years, we will be back at it. But we have the basis for our union going forward. This protects both the city and the police officers, so it's a good day for them. We have no introduction of legislation tonight. Next on the agenda is the Historical Overlay / Design Review Board discussion. It was brought forward through discussions with the planning and zoning, with Airbnb, and also with discussions with some of the residents downtown. They would like to see a historical overlay, and we are going to bring it up for discussion tonight. And I think, Mr. Merriman, you wanted to talk about it first.
Yeah, we can have a fun conversation about this tonight. So, we've had a lot of discussion about design review, how boards like that work, areas that they need to focus on. I think that in light of some recent things that we've discovered through some of our legislations, that it would be a good idea to look at what a lot of people would call what Johnstown, quote in air quotes, what part of our charm of our town is our downtown area. Some of that is the township's land and not ours, so we can't really have purview over that, but everything that's surrounding it, I think that we should do our citizens a service and allow the design review board to focus solely on looking over that area and creating an overlay district that they can then put standards on so that we don't lose our historical charm. In that same vein, if they're going to spend all of their time, which would be awesome, I think, for them to be able to get to be part of that process and then get to review all of the things that go through there, hopefully with MKSK, that would then, in my opinion, we should shift all of they were doing certificate of appropriatenesses and shoot those back to planning and zoning to allow this process to happen faster. That also being said, I think that while we're talking about that area, I think that the GCC one area down there got kind of wrapped up into what we would consider our historical area. I think that we need to take a look, you'll have to look up the resolution for me, Sean, but repeal all transient businesses in the GCC one, GCC two, in all areas of Johnstown until we can set this overlay district up to then go back and talk about the legislation and how it was intended to be passed in the first place. Just because we have had some issues with the GCC one falling kind of victim to what's allowed, what was supposed to have only been allowed for a select small area of our town is now getting utilized by others. And it's kind of unfair to the residents, and it's kind of unfair for the city to have a little bit of a battle, to say the least, over what you can and can't do with those transient businesses. It's not fair for the people that own the properties to be limited to something that their building or house can't facilitate. So I think that we should open up discussion about that, because I think it's something that's going to be extremely important going forward. And I think that if we don't do it now, we'll lose it.
Can you explain to everyone what a historical overlay is?
So not to be confused with historical in the sense that it's going to be a historical district, and then all of what would be considered like a quote unquote historical home where you're getting a placard and being held to a certain standard by a historical society. This would be a namesake. We would call it the historical overlay district, where we would overlay a district. So right now, our historical town falls into GCC 1 and a little tiny bit, depending on how you want to say, GCC 2. We would take and overline the area that we're going to deem as the historical, you could probably pull it up, Sean, if you want, I don't know if you're hooked in, the historical heart of Johnstown, and the areas that we think should be kept as such. And when we do the overlay district, you can impose certain rules that you can't in other areas. So I think that one of the things that we lost when we brought in transient businesses is kind of one of the huge drivers of this too, is it was supposed to be, you want to zoom all the way in on Main Street. The way that it's written is upstairs use only, and it's intended only for the downtown businesses that are 2 stories that already had apartment buildings or places to stay in the top. Because GCC 1 is tied with the downtown district, we now ran into some heated conversations, to say the least, in planning and zoning meetings, where it's not the people that are applying for the permits' fault that they're applying for these permits, because it's a conditional use. But it's hard to justify letting somebody do a conditional use when it wasn't intended in that way. So I think that the best way to solve it going forward is to do an overlay district, which would encompass an area that we define as the quote unquote historical area of Johnstown. And then that'll also let us put design standards in place so that you don't have people come in and tear buildings down and or change historical homes or other historical features in the town.
So, make sure I'm understanding this. So the areas that would be in this historical overlay district would have their own special set of rules that would not be like GCC 1, GCC 2.
I think they have-
They would have their own set of
Right.
rules that apply to just that area, to preserve that area.
We could then change the zoning to make it uniform just for, it's kind of hard to tell, but if you look at the GCC 1, it keeps going in and out.
Oh, we lost it.
Yeah. If you're looking at the, zoom in a little more on GCC 1, if you're looking at the GCC 1 district, what's hard to tell is the top white line on the, what would be the north side of the screen is Casson. So you have, and you're going all the way down to, it ends up at Jersey, or one before it. But all of those houses that say GCC 1 are under the same purview as all of the businesses, and vice versa. The businesses are under the same zoning purview of all of those houses. So a lot of what I would say the residents, when we talk about what makes Johnstown, Johnstown, right? It's going to be, everybody says small town charm, and they say it's the look of Johnstown. Well, one of the things that we can preserve right now is our downtown. That doesn't mean that people can't modify the downtown. It just means that hopefully going forward, we can make improvements that make the downtown improve on what's already in the downtown, right? So maybe if everybody wants to come in and paint all the buildings purple next year, we can say, listen, we have all these standards. You're not meeting these standards. We don't want purple buildings here. And we can continue on. So we would be trying to overlay, and again, it doesn't have to be defined at this moment, but a district somewhere that's probably only pertaining in and around that GCC 1 in the heart of 3762 Cross. Where we go north, south, east, and west on 37 and 62, I think would be dependent on what we all consider the historical heart of Johnstown. But I think that this is the perfect project for the design review board to take on. And they could utilize MKSK. They can do a very specific standard for a small area, and then keep moving the train down would be my hope. You start with this area, and then you could relook all of their design review standards and just keep going until they get all the way done. But I think this is a good first start before we don't make any changes and we lose the character of our downtown.
I'd like to get citizen comments in a moment, but Mr. Green, do you have anything you'd like to say about this?
There's a lot on this one. I mean, I don't know if you want to lose your meeting and go down a rabbit hole here, but we're about to.
We'll take an overview. high
So
level.
here's the thing. You've got like 5 different problems with all of this that we've tried to fix longer than John and I were even on zoning. You were trying to fix these things. You had zoning rehash all of it. You had new zoning come up. That zoning was unfortunately killed. It used to mirror a lot of what was in the design review. They made a lot more sense and worked together in synergy. Part of it is no longer with us, part of it is. Now, with everything that's happened in the last 2 years, we never really had a chance to go back and revisit. You had strong leadership there in the beginning because you had a city planner that had helped create it, that was there. You had people on zoning, you had, different people involved with it that were involved in creating it, understood how it worked. You brought people on, and then you had a lot of turnover. So unfortunately, it kind of got lost in the shuffle. And it was one of those things, and Bob could tell you, we had a meeting, tried to have a joint meeting, council, zoning, design review to kind of work on a lot of the issues. And it was admitted there that, a lot of these things were lost in the shuffle. So you're trying to fix, several years of issues, missing documents, things like that. Now, I know the design review has been a problem in the last couple of years, or at least it was labeled that way in the last year or so. To take it out of the process, I've heard them say that, it's not great for the speed of business, it's not great for certain areas and things like that. I've heard that criticism, and I could see that. It was, it wasn't designed as a catch-all for everything, and it hasn't exactly been hashed out and incorporated in the way it was intended to, and I can see that. But continuing to take out, now it is one of the few committees that has no council involvement, and I don't know if that's an issue, but it is a citizen group that gets citizen comments on a lot of different issues. We lost that again. But to fix all these issues tonight, it's going to be a long process. We do need this overlay district. There was more of that in the initial zoning code that we had created. It didn't make it through. We do need that. It would help for a lot of issues and a lot of zoning. It would help zoning. It would help design review. It would be nice to have people on our zoning had actually started to go down that road of creating it. I know there's some rough drafts out there somewhere. So I know that there's that. It was something that we intended to bring up the next zoning meeting anyway. The Airbnb kind of exacerbated the issue in showing us that it was a conditional use, but it may not be applied the same way by every zoning board. And it's tough. GCC 1 is a wild district. You're trying, you have houses in there. You have businesses in there, different kinds of business. I think from asking historic questions around here from people who've been involved over the years, it was our most restrictive zoning. I think that's why they did it that way. And it's worked for years and they never saw a reason to switch. Well, here we are in a different time now. So I'd agree. It's tough to police GCC 1 and do different uses in there. So having an overlay district would help a lot. And that was something that we talked about while we were doing zoning, and we had different names and different ways to do it. Design review, though, does help a lot. And like I said, there's 5 different issues here. This is not a single fix that you could vote on tonight and fix this. This is weeks of conversation to fix all the problems in this district and with everything else in here.
I think what you're missing, though, is the intent of what I just said is not to get rid of anything. It's to use a board that is supposed to have oversight over design and review of structures and use them to fix a problem that we have especially since they meet enough, so they're going to get to do it all. And all they're doing, the only thing they're losing control of for a short period of time would be COAs, up until they can then start going, after they do this one, through each one. And then as soon as they get the next one done,
It's a
let 'em look at
temporary
that one.
solution, a long-time fix. I think the people on there can handle multiple approaches. We do on zoning. We look at different
If
things,
you have
and
three
then we'll work on
COAs, you're
zoning in a
never
night.
gonna get to talk
You're
about it.
also hopping more work onto the zoning board.
The zoning
that is
board
gonna
doesn't
be
have that much
extremely
stuff to
busy
be
coming
doing.
up anyway.
Okay, so let's do this. I know there was a resident here who wanted to speak. Ms. Koppel, you had your hands up for a long, long time, so if you want to come up.
What's your hat now?
Hey, guys. So I think we've got some good news. You've got a lot of towns that mirror Johnstown. You've got Granville, Somerset, Roscoe Village. I could name a few others. Maybe recommend looking at some of their zoning codes. The sooner the better, the sooner the better. I mean, we're about to get swallowed up, and the residents are petrified right now. Like, no joke. I think that to work on the design standards is a good thing, but I think you guys, I think you need resident buy-in right now, because once you put those design standards in place, then the residents and the businesses have to upkeep the standards. So I don't know if you need to get petition buy-in, I don't know, but a lot of our residents can't even get sidewalks right now. So that's the only downside, but if we can get the overlay in place to protect it, I think that would be a good start. That's my opinion. And I do think Granville is a very good place to start. I think they've got a lot of GCC1-esque in them. They've got houses that have real estate offices, dentist offices. You wouldn't even know the difference. So I know there's a lot of parking and everything, but before we do any more Airbnbs, we need to get some bed tax revenues coming in.
Yes.
So let's look at this as an option. So I think both of you agree, and I'd like to hear the rest of the council, that we need to put a historical overlay district in place.
I agree, yes.
Is everybody in council agreeable to that? To have something that governs that zone a little bit better than what we're doing it.
I do. I'd like to see it go through multiple approach here, through design review council and zoning. I think that's how you get the best
So
product.
if we agree on that, then John's thought of having the design review concentrate just on that area. I think first of all, we need to get the design or the historical overlay done first. Now, Sean, would we be able to use MKSK to be able to help? I know they're swamped right now.
Yeah, the challenge that you have is the bandwidth. This has obviously been a conversation that's been brought up as a desire. Mrs. Koppel hit appropriately that trying to get this in place, and John and Ryan, I think it's easy for everyone to agree that this is something that needs to be done, because the architectural features which you're proposing in this design review district are obviously different than other architectural features, and that's usually how you kind of baseline your district, is from something that's established in that area, whether it be a time period or a building style and structure and things like that. So brought this up with MKSK. They said we would love to, but there's a great deal of work that goes into this, obviously. So they are trying to schedule out and prioritize what is the most critical piece that we get into right now. So I can rehash this discussion with them, see what a timeline expectation may be, and then also look at a priority list. If council says this is priority number one, then we can shove some other stuff out of the way. If council says this is priority number 4 out of a number of other items, then this will obviously have to wait. But if they can get us a timeline when they think that may be a reality, that's something I can check with them. I know the last time they just said it's going to be difficult, and that difficult doesn't give you a time frame. So I think we are wanting some detailed answers, and I will circle back around with them and say, what does this look like from a timeline standpoint?
Now, one of the other things John brought up was the transient businesses, and that we've got issues with the transient businesses. Is there anything that council can do at this point to alleviate that issue and try to fix that as a temporary fix until we can get this all corrected.
Dare I dance?
Yeah, we can amend.
We
can
can
put
put
that
that
we can amend
moratorium
the
on it.
resolution. Yeah.
Or we can
Let's
take
dance.
them out altogether.
So I'll go back to the same conversation of the prioritization list. So when you're prioritizing things, other things jump in between that. So I like to bucketize the day-to-day operations is in one bucket, future planning is another bucket, annexation in that whole PD district is another, water and sewer is another. So when you have operational things that exist, it obviously takes time away from some of the other capacities. Right now, that is a struggle that we have with a city because of staffing. So anytime that you take away an issue from an enforcement level that is sometimes challenging and complicating, you alleviate some time that can be spent elsewhere. So I'm trying to, like I say, dance with this conversation, but I think you know where I'm going with this, and that is we do get a fair amount of calls about transient. It seems to be a ever-populating problem or opportunity, however you want to look at it. But policing this has become difficult, and then whenever it becomes into the GCC1 area, which is the only place that it's allowed, but it's a conditional use, that conditional use is subject to the Planning and Zoning Board, then it has to go before the Planning and Zoning Board. So then in order to do that, a packet has to be put together, information has to be all prioritized, and then that board consumes its time with looking at that. So if you're asking me, would it be easier to not have any transient right now? It would be easier. Is that the right call to where you want to be at long-term? That's for you to decide. But just so everybody knows, what is permitted currently would be grandfathered in. It would now be a non-conforming use if you decided to remove the transient conditional use piece out of GCC1 as well as hotel. That would be my recommendation. If you're going to do it across the board, do it across the board. Then it would no longer be a conditional use, which means it's not permitted. So whenever somebody called in, it would be an easy phone conversation. It's not permitted, you can't do it. But it would allow for the current ones to remain in non-conforming because they were permitted. This has been changed. So if that was a question that you had, I'd try to answer that as well.
So I can explain this to everybody. The transient businesses are like Airbnbs, people who have lodging upstairs in their homes, like these beautiful two-story houses. They want to do Airbnb there. With our rules right now, you cannot do an Airbnb where they can use the lower half. So if they're using the lower half, they're in violation of our rules, and we have to enforce the rules. So they can only use the upper half. So if there's a dining room on the bottom half, they can't use the dining room. So this is part of the conversation, and why we're having this conversation is, does the rule make sense for these houses? Does it not make sense? So that's what we're trying to determine at this point, is how do we enforce it? Do we enforce it at this point?
The trouble with how the transient deal came to be was we had a business come to town that had a non-conforming use that council and zoning had trouble upholding a couple years ago. And there was an effort to create something out of nothing to allow a business to exist. And right or wrong, here's where we're at now. So, and it was never amended or really revisited afterwards because of everything that happened. The point of limiting it to GCC1 was because that's where that one business was, but also we didn't want to see neighborhoods bought up at cheap prices at the time, very cheap real estate prices. Airbnb companies from out of state could easily come in and buy up, go through the new addition and buy 3 or 4 houses together. At the time, there was nothing that said you couldn't turn your garage into a accessory dwelling unit. And so you'd have a house and a garage become an Airbnb potentially pretty quickly. That's what we wanted to fight. Also, we wanted to create that mechanism for a building that wasn't going to be enforced as a non-conforming use. We wanted to create a use.
Mr. Mayor, could
Yes.
I jump in on Ryan's comments and continue that scope of what an Airbnb is and to reference his points, about the new addition, AKA Rolling Meadows. Airbnb is not necessarily a single family use. It's not where a family comes in, resides, it probably mirrors more of a multifamily. So in the past, there's been a general hesitation for multifamily. You have multiple families or multiple individuals residing in the same house, not consistent necessarily with a single family, defined by single family dwelling unit. Now, there are the exceptions, grandma, grandpa, kids, things like that. But for the most part, single family. That Airbnb can trigger that multifamily, which sometimes there's challenges that exist with having multiple outside parties reside in the same area. So you could have a really great situation, and I think there's great opportunities that exist with some of these, but then you could also have the nefarious players that extract every piece of money and opportunity they can out of a specific property. So you may have a really great experience where they're just wanting, somebody to come in town, have a great experience at the restaurants, kind of have a gathering. But then you could also have a situation where you've got a construction site that needs to have housing for its construction crew, and all of a sudden transient becomes an opportunity. Rather than that house being used for single family, you've got a multitude of workers residing out of the same house. It puts a strain on the infrastructure of that area. It wasn't designed for that. It was designed for a single family, typically 2 cars. Now you got 6, 7 cars, depending on how many workforce people you have there. The transient, they don't necessarily put down roots, so trackability. If there's an issue happening, well, that was last week's guest. Now it's this week's guest. So it's harder from an enforcement standpoint to hit a moving target. So that's why transient has those additional looks and conditional uses. Not saying that all transient's bad. I think everyone in this room has probably had some type of Airbnb experience for a visitation of a guest, a relative, or vacation, and those have been wonderful opportunities. So they're not all created equal, but Johnstown is in a different playing field at the moment that does introduce some challenges.
So I think we're all in agreement that we'll have Sean look at, see what we can do with the historical overlay.
That's
Go ahead.
Buildings don't make a town, people make a town. Of course, legislation isn't to control buildings, it's to control people. I think it's a critical effort on our part as a council, as a community, to put things in place that preserve monikers, buildings, monuments that represent what we are. My hope is that we can be intentional in whatever we do. If that makes the design review board exclusive to it, if it makes it part of what they do, I prioritize this up the list. I mean, it's going to be towards the top. If we're going to be diligent in development, we've got to be diligent in preservation at the same time. These things have to happen in parallel. So the sooner we can identify a historical district, and the sooner we can get rules and regulations in place, not only will that have the preservation effect that I think we all want, it'll also signal to outside parties, outside developers, the nefarious players that were mentioned, that are looking to do things that's not an opportunity. Seek that elsewhere. To go back and forth and plan and figure and stuff, every delay we have presents opportunity. The more we talk about preparing to prevent bad things from happening, are opportunities for folks to come and take advantage. So whatever we do, I think time is of the essence, and moving this forward quickly is going to be critical to us getting the best product in the end. Any additional delay, any additional disagreement about process is only going to limit the product at the other end. So that's my thought on it, and
Do you have a suggestion then how we move forward with it then?
I would get a historical overlay, very specific to what, narrow. Even if we miss an outlying property, we want something that's controllable and we can be impactful immediately. I would ask the design review board to focus on it. Whether that's exclusive or in addition to, that's up to their bandwidth, their capacity, and we'll let the zoning committee determine what that is, since they are
So
underneath.
how do we get this historical overlay created quickly? Do we move it as the top priority list, or where do we put it for, because,
Depending on the amount of time and effort it would take from MKSK to complete this, and what that limits them from doing, I would move it up proportionally to that. If there is other matters that are critical that they're 90% done, wrap that up. If they are looking at holistic things and picking and choosing, I would ask them to focus on that because that can't be recovered once it's lost.
I would say if you have a lot of their legwork done for them, it's going to expedite their process.
So by looking at other cities,
I'm saying if you had a board or committee that went through and did all of their due diligence and did the preparation work, and you're presenting a document that's 3/4 of the way there, or the thought or the ideas that are 3/4 of the way there, and they're just filling in the gap and making sure that it's done correctly, I think you're gonna be able to have them move very quickly instead of just putting it on their board to do and then pushing it back down. Does that make sense?
Historically, there's two ways to do this. You either have an expert draft you a document, or you put a team together where you have 9 people over there between zoning and design review that can sit there and say, here's something from another city that has worked, or multiple other cities. Or they get a very loose outline from MKSK or legal, some sort of help, framework to guide them. And they sit there and they go through what works and what doesn't, and they create a document. Now, that's time consuming.
Yes.
And in the interest of speed, obviously easier to have a consultant do it. Consultant is very busy with other things. Zoning board also, I mean, we have an 80-page document we're currently going through, and we're
100%.
gonna have way more. So I think leaving, I mean, we got rid of certain things off of our docket for a reason. We knew we were gonna get busy. Design review came in to help. So you have 9 members of the public, which ultimately we work for the public, so it's the best to have their buy-in. If they could sit there and put this together, it goes through design review and through zoning, comes to council, got a lot of eyes looking at it, I think we get a good product.
What's the time frame? That's my only. I mean,
That's-
I think
that's the
that's the
tough
ideal
part.
process.
I think we have
Is
to
it a
be-
year away?
It took us to create the design review board in general was probably what, 2 years? I don't think there's anybody left that was on that.
let's have Sean get with MKSK, find out what their timeline is, what their priorities are right now, report back to council so we have that, we can make a decision on that. Now, the design review board, what they're gonna look at, I think that's a larger discussion that we have to look at as a council, once we designate what the historical overlay is, we can decide what we want design review board to do.
Can I make a comment, please?
Yes, go ahead.
So going forward with this discussion, I would really like to see an architect be in this discussion.
Well,
Okay,
and that,
because,
when we
you know,
discuss design review board, we can look at that as making requirements that we have an architect as part of it, or an architect on staff or consultant that we can go to. I think that's something, I think we all can agree that we need a certified architect to be
Yeah,
able to
we
look
do.
at these plans before they get to
Design review.
design review board or anybody else. But I think council needs to take the steps and get the research and come, so that we can decide what we want design review board to be, what the steps are before it gets design review board. Mr. Merriman?
So I think the thing that we keep touching on is that we have limited staff and limited time. And the intent with,
Limited money.
and limited money, right? So the intent with the conversation was, we have a board of people that we have talked about numerous times. And my thought was that people have said that you have a qualified group of individuals, so why are we shying away from letting a qualified group of individuals start the legwork on something that's gonna have to work its way back up the chain anyways? But if we agree that it's something that's of time is of the essence, why shouldn't we take that and make that their sole focus to get it pushed through fast, so they're not worrying about anything but that? If you have a group that's only worrying about one thing, they can move at a speed much quicker than if they're doing 5, 6, or 7 things. And that's why this is where I'm going with the conversation is, Sean can't possibly do it all the time and work on any of the stuff that he's doing. I don't think Jack wants to do it. I mean, maybe he does. I doubt it. Right? MKSK's tied up.
Chief seems excited.
Planning and zoning is about to start ripping through the PD document. So if you just logically look at what it leads us, is we have a board of individuals that's made up entirely of citizens, that the citizens can come to their board meetings and talk while they're there. It just made the most sense for me to say, hey, what do we have available as a resource and how do we utilize it in the best way? So that's why I said, hey, if we could just take the design review board and task them with this, it's gonna eventually have to go to planning and zoning and then come up to council, or it can go in whichever way we wanted, but it just allows us to free up resources to do something that people think is important, I think it's important, other council members have said they think it's important, the citizens think it's important. And if we have a group that can do a task, why would we not
But
task them with
let's
it?
do this, because in the time of us,
I had one more question,
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if that's okay. So, as we're trying to prioritize, I hesitate to bring things up, but I think it's of critical importance. We obviously are saying this is elevated to the top. I've also heard the same discussion that the design of the overall Johnstown is also elevated to the top. So you have an overlay district, which specifically speaks to an area, but then to Nicole's point about having an architect on staff for any new development that occurs, what provision of standards do we have in place that exist that instruct how that development is supposed to look? We are at current a pretty blank slate on any direction or any kind of ordinance or any document that provides guidance on that. So the other piece that I think it was 2 meetings ago, we talked about the importance of getting that particular document in place for any new development or any redevelopment of any outside areas, whether it be residential, commercial, GCC2, industrial. And I need to know which one you want to prioritize over the other. I can tell you, if you ask my opinion, I will give you my preference. And it may not be consistent with your alls, and you all can direct me, and I will listen and do whatever you tell me to. But I'm hesitant to pull MKSK away from that issue and have them go towards the downtown overlay. And not saying that downtown doesn't need an overlay district by any means, but if you're going to pull them from the design guidelines of the rest of Johnstown in order to facilitate this specific one, I do have a concern with that.
Is it not part of the whole?
No.
No.
No,
They would be very separate, and to do a downtown area may be a little bit quicker, but the overall design package, and that's where I would love to see an architect be on staff. I think it would streamline the process, but with having an architect on staff, having a guiding document that gives architectural standards in place that we can point to, just simply by having a color palette.
Yeah.
We talked about that at the last meeting, as far as, this variety of options is available. You're outside that spectrum, and it comes back.
Didn't,
I think here though, at the beginning of the year, we talked about obviously comp plan. Comprehensive plan's gotta be first. We don't have that done yet.
correct.
And then after the comprehensive plan, I believe we talked about going into zoning and design review after that. So we
Did-
still don't have the comprehensive plan done. So that needs to be done, because so you have a guiding document for a lot of this other stuff.
Didn't
Now
we
you're
just
trying, it
ask
sounds
them
like
with
you're
that?
trying to treat symptoms here instead of treating the whole thing.
so
So if
let's
you
do
get that
this.
comp plan done, and then I think you start working on these other things, I think you're gonna get a better product.
Hold on.
I agree.
We're like shielding the fact that we're having a conversation about something that we've already talked about 5 times now. Didn't we not sit in this room with some of these same people and have a conversation about the design review board and them going through the design standards? And that was their task at hand right now. Did we not?
We never had.
Yes, we did.
exactly-
Hold. We had a discussion. We never voted to direct him that way.
Right.
Now, if someone wants to make the motion that they want to direct him that way.
What were the emails
we'll
that
vote.
were sent out then?
That, there was no motion made. So if you would like to make a motion, we can have a motion to direct the design review board to do that. We've got to follow the procedure. We just can't, 3 council members can't say we want them to do that. We just need,
I want to pull the
react.
meeting minutes
I don't
from it
wanna
because
react.
I'm pretty certain that we had a long conversation
we
about
did.
it.
It was never a motion.
And that's why they started gathering material. Why would they have gathered material if no one gave them direction? Again, then you have a board
They
that's not
gathered material
working.
because they got tired of waiting on this
Okay,
council.
so
to
we-
act.
we've
They've
gotta
been
move this
wanting
forward.
to do this job all year.
I don't want
Okay.
to. I don't want to overreact or react quickly to a conversation piece. Comp plan's critical, but what I don't want to do is let the historical downtown get permanently changed
Or
if-
ignored.
If we can do things in parallel. Now I know there's a certain amount of time and availability of resources and people and all that. I just want to make sure we're being intentional and not having a discussion and not coming to conclusion, whatever that may be, and move ahead and push this off. You know, we will learn a lot in November based upon what the community wants, based upon how they vote on the revenue change. That will present opportunity itself. But I would like to make sure that we have just direction when we leave here. And I'm not pining for either way. I just want to know, we have to protect the community as a whole and the historical downtown to come out with the product we want at the end.
Okay, so let's do this tonight, if everyone's in agreement. We will have a report from MKSK, what they're working on, what their timeline is, how soon they could get to this, if they can do it. Then council knows what their timeline is. Council then could direct either design review board to start working on this, or leave it for MKSK. Is everyone okay with that?
And I'd appreciate that. That's what we talked about in zoning, to kind of
That's
take
very
that
important.
course of action.
Knowing what
And you got
the
multiple
cost
people with their
benefits
hands up, by
are
the way.
is important.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just for
quick.
clarification, since we're on that, I'm saying that design review overlay district, but I'm putting the other piece in front of that, because they're gonna come back and say, well, sure, we can get it done. If you want us to drop everything, we can get it done in 2 months.
No, we need to know what they're working on, what they're working on now, when the timeline of what they are working on now, when it's gonna be complete, how long it would take to work on this.
Additionally to what
Additionally.
their current palette
Yes.
is, and I'm making sure that the current palette is comprehensive plan, then design guidelines.
Yes.
For the entirety of the city,
Mhm.
not
Right,
comprehensive plan,
and a
overlay
historic
district,
overlay also.
then design guidelines. Okay, that's what I want to make sure on, because your number would be very different dependent upon the sequence of these.
Yeah,
of those.
sure. Sir, did you have your hand up?
I did. To John's point, if it's about resources and kind of getting things together before we hand it over to the consultant, how many people are on each committee that we have? Can we poll one person from each committee as a subcommittee to kind of get started on something like that? To get the ball rolling and then hand it over to the consultant?
That's one
It's
way
a
to look at it,
possibility,
yeah.
Yeah, you'd
And-
have to just have people that are willing to
To put in the time and do the work.
Because they're not paid. These are complete
understand.
volunteers, yeah.
But if you've got 5 people on a committee, do we really need 5? Can we pull one for a limited amount of time to where they're not double
Right.
timing?
And I think that's something we have to look at once we hear back from MKSK of what their time frame is. That then we can say, we want to put it to design review board, or we want to create a committee like he's saying, to have them work on it. But at least we know what the professionals can do. Is everyone fine with that?
Yeah.
Did you, and a question.
Hold on, Charlie.
Does MKSK have a basic design? In other words, if you take this and I can apply it to 5 members, 5 different people who want to help us out, but here's guidelines that will help you to start putting that together, even though MK isn't doing it, we're doing it, but they're giving us a guideline that would say, that'd be more professional, that we can take a look at. And so we're hobnobbing all the way around, everybody putting their own opinion in. We're really following a guideline that will help us make those decisions and maybe cut back on that cost. But I mean, at least we get started with something.
Yeah, an
that-
example, so maybe that's something we ask them
You know.
to. Ms. Coppell?
So can we come out of here with possibly a couple of small ones? Number one, Airbnb situation.
We're gonna get that in just a second.
Okay.
I'm trying to tackle one problem at a time.
So, because we don't have that tax set up, and it's already burdening our city manager, taking all these phone calls because of the excess Airbnbs without traditional uses. Secondly, shoot, I forget now.
It's a multi-pronged approach. That's what I said. There's like 6
I'll
problems.
get back to you once you, okay. So
Like
we're
6 problems here.
Okay.
We're gonna go to MKSK, get ideas from them, how they can do it, maybe an example that if they're gonna be a year from now, that we can create a committee to work on.
Create a committee, I
Or-
think,
There is every chance that zoning has a rough outline already working on this and could come up with something
Okay.
very rough at the
and they
next
can
meeting.
pass it down to design review and look at that PD
Okay,
district
so that
for
will
a
be,
while.
that will be what we discuss next week, once we find out the answers from MKSK. The second issue we gotta address is the Airbnb. Okay, and Ms.
I'm
Coppell.
so sorry. The second one, in the meantime, if you want some constituents who had maybe even just trying to get some of the GCC1 residents to even buy in or sign petitions, that to me is the first start, to see if anybody even has a need or want, you'll truly find that out. And then that's gonna determine a lot with all this upcoming stuff happening. and time.
Okay. Do we have any motion or any movement on what to do with the transient business? The moratorium, what do you guys want to do with
I'd
that?
like to make a motion that we repeal them altogether from all of our conversations until at some other point in time, another council, because it's not gonna be this one, wants to revisit it.
So that would leave the ones that are in right
The ones
now.
that are in their grandfather and no one else could apply for any.
That's not a
I
moratorium.
would
that's
argue
a
for a
repeal.
6-month
That's a repeal.
moratorium to allow us to address this.
So we have a motion on the table to repeal them. Do I have a second? It dies. Okay, Mr. Green.
I would like to make a motion for a 6-month moratorium on all transient housing.
Again, that would do the same thing as John's, except it would be just for 6 months.
Right.
And-
That'll give us
and
time to
hotel.
figure it out,
Excuse me?
to take a look at it. Because I don't think everybody wants to kill those, like completely permanently. I think we want to take a look at how they can be best defined and go forward.
Where are we gonna have time in 6 months? We don't have time to look at anything else.
We can always.
We can always extend it. So we have a motion for 6 months. Do I have a second for 6 months?
I don't want a second, but I want him to define what you mean, moratorium. Define what you mean by a moratorium.
You will not be able to apply for an application for transient housing in the next 6 months.
Okay, how about the ones that already have it?
So the ones that already have it will be grandfathered in.
They will be able to still be able to conduct
I'm
their
asking, I just
business.
want to make sure that we're not all of
Either-
a sudden just cutting
no,
it
either
off like
way.
that, and you're saying now you're out.
Either
even
way,
with-
they'd be grandfathered in.
Yeah, either way, they'd be.
So they
grandfathered in.
would continue to be able to operate. It would give Sean the ability not to get all these calls about all the transient and have to take them to zoning for
Right.
6 months.
Okay, I'm
So
okay. I just wanna
Ryan's
make
got the
sure.
motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, sir.
Sorry to jump in. I know it's out of procedure. The motion on the floor is just for transient. There are two items, transient and hotel. I don't know if you want to include both of them. Or not. Or if you're just doing a transient, because they're both in that they're both in the same structure and framework of the GCC 1 district. So I'm just not advocating for one, I'm just wanting clarification.
Do you want to amend it, Ryan?
We can. Let's,
Oh, no, I have to.
But
I already made.
I would have to.
We can't amend it.
I can't amend it.
you can't amend it, so.
I would have to
Take a vote.
rescind,
Take
I'd
a
have to
vote.
rescind the motion and then make a secondary
Just
motion.
take a vote.
I think we'll let it
Okay,
ride
so we have a
on with that,
motion,
but
we have a
then-
She called for a question, you have to do it.
Take
She
a
called
vote.
for a vote.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, we have a call for vote, so go ahead.
Sorry.
Bob Orsini,
No.
John Merriman.
No,
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Ryan Green,
Yes.
Sharon Hendrick,
Jeez. No.
Charlie Campbell.
No.
Nicole Shutt.
No.
Okay, so that motion dies. Do we have another motion now?
Before you go again, please discuss the 6 months.
Yes.
I think it's a valid point that John
Okay.
called out, because if you're gonna do a moratorium for 6 months, people are gonna sit on the sidelines, whenever they call in, they're gonna say, okay, when are they gonna readdress it?
Yep.
And I'm gonna have food truck 2.0. Sorry to bring it up, but once you bring it up, then it's something that they wanna participate in, and then they're gonna be in here at meetings advocating on their behalf, and then trying to get in front of the committees in order to sway the opinion. That is a concern I have with a 6-month time frame. It seems like it's something you're going to act on rather soon, and you're just trying to craft the ordinance. I think that's misleading to the applicants.
then I'll make a motion to repeal all Airbnbs going forward and hotels.
Explain
But leave-
repeal.
So we would be taking it off the books and it would no longer be allowed to be a use other than the ones that are already in place. So no one else can come in and apply for one, and at some other point in time, if any other council wants to come back and change the legislation, they can do so. So I would like to repeal people from being able to come in at all and applying for Airbnbs, transient use, and hotels going forward.
I'll second that.
Oh, sorry, you guys act too fast. Sorry.
What?
Good. I'm gonna defer to our clerk of council, but there is a motion on the floor, so it will need to be voted on. From a procedural ordinance standpoint, I'm bringing up our current ordinance. In order for us to modify things, it has to be done in accordance with a certain step. So I'm not trying to throw gum in the works here, but
So it's,
if you want to make a motion, but the motion's on the floor, so you got to vote on it.
I
You guys
said
gotta
under
sort it out.
all, I said under all. So it would include all, so it's listed in GCC one, it's listed in it's listed in everyone, because it says it is or isn't allowed. So this would be making them all consistent with it's not allowed anywhere.
Are you
So
okay
we're-
with tracking
we're-
that from an ordinance standpoint? Typically, we'll have
Yeah,
a
you're-
red line brought
I
up
just have to
and
bring back the
Right.
ordinance with struck review.
Okay.
Have to look and see how.
The purpose, the reason that I support this is to take the burden off the
Right.
city of getting these calls every day, because everyone's trying to make a dollar with these residences, and also so we can get everything set up straight to do it right in the future.
You're also
Because
taking-
obviously, there's problems with it now.
You're taking the
Businesses
liability.
showed up and advocated for it either way, and then one of them went through with creating one, so.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
I'm going to throw out a hypothetical. Let's say you hypothetically vote this down, then you could make a motion to strike G and H. A little cleaner, but you can do it however you want.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure I understand the full concept of what you're talking about too. So if a piece of ground is annexed into Johnstown and a Hilton wants to build a hotel, that's a no.
Not correct.
Can't happen.
Not correct. Because it's coming in
Okay, well,
annexed.
That's why I'm wanting clarification.
Right.
Annexation would be.
But through
under whatever
annexation-
law.
Depending what they zoned it as.
Correct. This would be taking it so that nobody can come back in GCC one and say, I want to turn my house, I want to turn, that's all that's
I
allowed.
get that with Airbnbs, I
Right.
just, the term hotel,
Well-
I was wondering about.
Jack brings up a good point. Under the current resolution or motion that's been made, removing transient and hotel from all, it could have implications if you simply remove it from all, then it's not even in a definition or defined, so then it's not even a use. If you have, for instance, say a hotel in a PD district or some type of transient use.
It's going to cause more problems.
It's,
So
the
let's-
definition doesn't go away. Just because you repeal it doesn't mean that you have to take the
Let's-
definition out.
What's the?
Because it has to
wording?
be defined, it has to be defined anyways.
I would agree. What's the wording for the motion that's on the floor? That would
Repeal.
help. This is turning into a complete.
The wording of the motion currently is to repeal transient and hotel uses.
Yes. Conditional uses.
So was it only ever allowed in GCC one, period?
Yeah.
Is that-
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the only place we allowed it. And as a conditional use, it was
Correct.
never expressly allowed.
I hear the intent. I could get with Yaz to draft something and bring it next time.
Let's see if this passes, then if it does, that we,
Like I said, my recommendation, I know this would be very clean, and that would be motion to remove G and H. That's a clean way to do it. But if you want to go, there's a very specified situation that you can point to. You can say 1155.03. I make I'm not trying to overstep.
okay, let's vote.
Is it anywhere else?
Nope.
It's isn't it worded it's worded in other places, but as no's.
Let's vote. We'll see what it does. Then if it doesn't, we can attach it to that exact language.
Okay, so the motion I have is to repeal transient and hotel uses. John Merriman,
Yes.
Mayor Barnard,
No.
Ryan Green,
No.
Sharon Hendrick,
And no.
Charlie Campbell,
No.
Nicole Shutt.
No.
Robert Smith.
No.
Okay, now redo your motion with,
Do the motion again.
Do you want me to maybe give a motion that you?
Go ahead.
maybe second?
yes.
Go.
Okay. A possible motion could be to modify 1155.03 conditional use. The other piece I'm gonna say is this is an ordinance, and it's technically supposed to go through 2 readings. So you would then need to waive the emergency provision. That's why I just wanna make sure we get this right, because this is a high probability of
Yes.
this being.
We don't want
challenged.
legality.
So you would.
Right.
Want to make the recommendation, or however you want to do it, 1155.03 under conditional use, to scratch G and H from conditional uses. And then, like I said, you would also want to waive the second reading and pass it by emergency if you wanted to pass it tonight. Is that accurate, Teresa? I don't know that they can amend an ordinance.
I'd have to bring back an ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to, it wouldn't be,
Legislation has to be.
if it was my business, I'd hope somebody would treat me like that, at least give me a meeting and not do it in an emergency.
Yeah, I don't want to do it in emergency.
According to our charter,
Just-
at least the title of the legislation has to be published.
Yes.
That's where I'm concerned legally. And I get what you're doing, and I support that. I just want to make sure we don't get into a legal situation where if we don't get this right, somebody comes back in and challenges us, and
So let's-
they look back at the record and they say, you guys you didn't do this right, you didn't give public comment enough time, and then it just kind of all went sideways.
So can we bring the ordinance back for,
Let's make a motion to make it an ordinance.
Fine
There
with
we go.
that.
I'll make a motion to make, ready? To make an ordinance on, what's our next meeting date?
September 19th.
yes,
On September 19th, that's going to amend 1155.03 under conditional uses G and F,
G and H?
or G and H,
Thank
to
you.
repeal.
I feel better about that.
I'll get with the law director too, just to have.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Public comment?
Well, it's going to be an ordinance, so it's going to have a second reading next time.
This is
It's gonna be a first reading. It's
Resolution.
gonna be a first reading.
Just direction.
It's just a
Just trying to
resolution.
get first reading.
And bring it-
Okay, we have one comment.
So why H?
Oh, I'm sorry. G, gosh.
Yeah, G.
You said G and.
You're right.
H.
I'm
Just
just,
Like, I see like B.
you're good. I'm
I can-
quickly going through and I'm assuming H is
Just
hotels,
G.
but hotel
Yeah,
and
it's all
transient.
one.
You're right, it's just H, or G.
It's just.
Just G.
It's been a long day. It's just G,
Just G.
just G. Whew. I'm thinking of the definitions where it actually has two outline pieces.
What
in it.
about B on there? That may not be related, I guess.
Go down, go
Down.
up.
That would be unrelated, but good call out.
Unrelated, okay,
Yep.
alright, just checking.
That
Okay,
is currently.
so we have a motion and a second.
Donnie.
Mayor Barnhart.
Yes.
Brian Green.
No.
Sharon Hendrick.
Yes.
Charlie Campbell.
Yes.
Nicole Shep.
Yes.
Bob Orsini.
Yes.
John Garrett.
Yes.
Okay. Thank God that's over with.
Other business?
Want to come over to zoning?
No.
I got one more.
You
got-
never pay me enough to go to zoning.
I got one on other business.
Okay, well, we're gonna move to other business, so you got parameters to go to MKSK about, we'll talk about it next time. Under other business, this is my favorite time of the year to do this, and the easiest one, we get to set the date and time for trick or treat. Now, I've spoken with the chief, because the chief has strong feelings on this, of not having it on a weekend, correct? What about a Sunday?
WRPC, the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, I don't know, they have recommendations for all Central Ohio, where if it falls on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, if Halloween falls, then you have it on the actual Halloween. So
Yeah.
their recommended 2023 date is October 31st. It's a Tuesday evening.
Okay.
It's to be a fifth Tuesday, so you don't have a meeting.
Awesome. I say
Okay.
go for it.
So, October 31st, do we have recommendations on time? Now, last year we did 6:30 to 8. It seemed we wanted to try, because of the parents that work till 5 and have to get home, it is hard to get your kid out by 5:30. So we pushed it to 6:30. That seemed a little late because kids want to get early start. Most of us up here have little kids. And so should we go with 6 to 7:30? 6:30 to 8? It just, last year seemed like it was too late. Do we move it to 6 to 7:30?
I like that 6:30 to 8. Honestly, it was easy to get home.
My
Got-
recommendation
got
is
dark.
think about the 30 minutes when it has to deal with the time of the
Dark.
sun and get it
Yep.
dark.
Yeah.
Little kids, you guys are downtown.
Yep. It was dark by
I will
8.
tell you from the last half hour of last year, I was a nervous wreck.
Yep.
What
I
would,
was. I mean, I'm driving around in downtown and I'm a nervous wreck just waiting for somebody to stop.
so what time would you recommend?
Mine is 6 to 7:30.
6 to 7:30. Okay, so
That works.
do we need to make a motion on this, Teresa?
Sure.
Okay, I make a motion that we celebrate trick or treating on October 31st from 6 PM to 7:30.
I'll second.
I'm gonna ask if all are in favor.
Aye.
Then opposed?
And Andrea, this does not affect anything with the chamber, correct?
No.
Okay.
We have a Shark Tank with the highest state that we propose. Thank you for making it the 30.
Did something right tonight, yes. Okay, yes.
You skip past other business?
No,
No,
that
it
was
was
the
under other
first
business.
ticket on
That
other
was the
business.
First one?
I just wanted to just to
Hey, I've been following everything perfect
No,
tonight.
I just want to make sure I have an opportunity.
Yeah.
God forbid.
Okay, so
Drag
I have no
something.
other business, Mr. Merriman.
All right, this one's real fast and you're gonna like it, so.
Oh, maybe.
A while ago, I had brought up an email discussing hopefully taking our staff reports and not making some of our staff come in and not necessarily making it being read out loud at the meetings. They are in the packet, so anybody can read it if they want to. I don't know how excited people are about biosolid waste, but they might be, and I might be raining on somebody's parade right now, but I would like to give our staff a little time back and nix that part of our meetings if people would be in agreement with that. Include them in the packet. If there's questions, obviously we can have a session for asking questions, but
I can go along with that. I would still like to have Jack's as the
Right.
service director, Dave's as the finance, and Sean's as the
Right.
city manager. But the water, sewer, and streets.
correct.
Do you
Go
want
on.
those individuals to attend for questions?
I think
or
that
they get a free pass?
If Jack's okay, Jack can answer them.
I can cover them.
You skipped me, I don't know.
No, I was waiting.
We
for
like
that.
yours.
I would, Chief doesn't have to necessarily present a report, we can read through it, but I think it's critical that he's here
Right.
to address any things that are of immediate need or to take questions.
We don't need to present.
No,
Just to clarify,
I can
if
read
we
it.
include it in the packet. If you have questions, you ask us. We don't have to go line by line.
Or if you have anything that you want to talk about, you could talk about it. Specifically.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, are those reports viewable to the public at any point?
They're in
When
this.
they're in the packet.
The
they-
packet's
the
online.
packet.
Anybody
Okay.
can look at it.
Okay,
Because I mean, if people want to read about them, that's why I said leave them in the packet,
Okay.
but I don't necessarily think that they need to come in and,
I just want to make sure they're viewable to the public.
yep.
Do we need to make a motion on that, or can we just direct staff?
Direct staff.
Okay, perfect.
I'll note it in a minute.
You guys are good with it?
Yep.
Ms. Ender?
So much of the information is repetitious.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I mean.
So essentially, we're providing the report, we're just not gonna be saying it out loud.
Unless you have something you want to talk about during that session,
Right.
specifically.
Everyone have
Something
an
important that you want to highlight.
Right. You don't
But like
have to-
Facebook likes, like stuff like that,
Yeah, we don't need that anymore.
read it.
Pictures of Donnie in your
It's
report, we don't
good.
need that anymore.
It's good, I mean, it's a
Tell
check
us
mark.
too, they kinda like that.
Okay, so do you have anything else?
That's it.
Mr. Green?
Just real quick, I wanted to thank the city of Johnstown, the citizens, staff, everybody involved. You guys have been everything I moved here for. So the last week's been pretty tough and interesting. And had a lot of people reach out with support and all kinds of other things. And tell you what, it's good to have it. So moved the family here, pretty much all of them, a couple years ago. And I've had them around me and everybody with the city. So it's been awesome. I want to thank you guys.
Anybody else up here for other business?
I don't want to follow that.
Mr.
but I got other business. Mine is not nearly as important or cool as that, because that's exactly why you move to a small town. And hopefully, as we continue to grow, we don't lose that flavor and that community support. So, like I said, I'm trying to follow it, but unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to. But I'll try. That whole framework of what we're trying to do as far as a comprehensive plan, building that. Ryan alluded to it a little bit earlier, so I was jumping at the opportunity to continue that. There's going to be a community meeting set for the 27th. Went back and I asked MKSK with everything that they've been doing, obviously the PD district, the extraterritorial piece that we've just introduced. I said, we've got to get back to the comprehensive plan as a whole. We're getting out above our skis and we're trying to run in parallel, and we knew we were gonna face this whenever we started going through the comprehensive plan as a whole, and our fear was we would not get it complete in time for a new development that was coming in, and that is exactly the scenario that happened. Nothing we could do to prevent that, it's just, it's how the timing and the environment that we live in. So, said, hey, let's get this comprehensive plan wrapped up. They agreed. They said, we've got to get it done. So the next community planning meeting that will be here will be on the 27th, I believe 6:30.
I don't Did they say a time?
Time to be determined.
We'll advertise it on our Facebook page,
Yes.
on our website when we know.
This is open to all the public, so it doesn't matter if you live inside the box, as it's been referenced, or outside the box. The more the merrier. I think this is a great opportunity for individuals to share their concerns, or at least their desires of what they want Johnstown to be like in the future, and that's that comprehensive plan. With that framework, which you all got a postcard, that's the county plan that's been happening. They're getting close to the finish line too. With a little luck, we may beat them, we'll see. But they are getting ready to wrap up their finalized document. Just as a council reference, having you all participate in the kind of the last meeting would be helpful. I know your busy schedules, so if time does allow, please be at that. Just know that there will be a request from this framework initiative for us to pass a resolution in support of the overall framework package that they put together. So if you have any oppositions or questions to it, I would recommend going to this meeting, voicing those, rather than waiting till it gets obviously all the way here. If you're looking to pass a resolution and you say, that's not consistent with my views, I don't want to pass it. We want to be good partners, and I think that's been the catchphrase of the year is partnerships. And they're open to listen to any ideas and recommendations, but we definitely want to be a part of that. So you've got your postcards. You should have all got an individualized email. If you didn't, let me know, and I'll rehash that with them. So framework, comp plan, I think that is all I have. I'll give my little 2-second story and wrap up. Everything that you're talking about, from the time frames that you want, from the cost of it, and the quality. And I wish John Knopfler's wife was here, because he's the one that actually told me this one time, and I'll never forget. You can have 2 of the 3, but you can't have all 3. Quality, fast, and cheap. And that is the exact situation that we're dealing with right now. We need things fast, and we need to do quality, and we don't have the money to pay for it. So you can either have them fast and quality, but you're gonna pay through the nose. Or you can have cheap and fast, but you get the point. So that's the situation we're in. So as much frustration as you have, it's understandable. Don't be too hard on yourselves. You're trying to do everything you can to the best of your ability. And I say this for the town to give you some leeway here. You don't have the money to go out and hire 15,000 different consultants. So you're dealt the cards that you have. You're trying to work within that framework that you have. So that's my 2-second story. I'll shut up now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I don't think people really understand the stress that the city's under right now, in the limited resources without the money. It'd be nice to have some of the money issues other cities have, but
We'll get there.
we'll get there one day. One item, Ms. Koppel texted me about Halloween now. Do we set up a rain date at all?
No.
No, we'd never do that.
The one time they moved it, it was like tornado warnings,
Yeah.
Okay,
but.
we're not gonna set a rain date.
Typically rain or
Umbrella.
Okay,
in the past,
like to go out.
unless you
You want
choose to do
candy?
something else.
okay.
We will take all of our candy to the Christmas parade.
There you go.
Okay,
One thing we're
so-
sure is candy.
Next is I have a motion to enter executive session to consider the purchase or sale of property and also to consider the employment of a public employee. We will move to the conference room for both sessions. In the first session, we will include all council members along with the city manager. The second session will include only council members.
No business to follow.
Not necessarily. I was told not to leave that out.
Nice.
Oh, look at that. You got it right the first time.
Both times tonight. I have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Ryan Green,
Yes.
Sharon Hendren,
Yes.
Charlie Campbell,
Yes.
Nicole Shook,
Yes.
Bob Rossini.
Yes.
John Merriman.
Yes.
Mayor Bernard.
Yes. Okay, take your potty break. We'll be over there in 5 minutes.
Should've said no.
Packed a lot tonight. You okay?
Sharon, thank
They're
you
giving
very
me a heart
much.
attack.
Appreciate it.
Oh, Mike, can't do it this way.